Hey, welcome to the Eyes on Jesus podcast with Drew and Tim. We're so grateful, thankful, and excited to be with you today. Thanks for checking our podcast out. And today's a great episode. We're going to talk about digital discipleship. This is something that it feels like every church is trying to not only figure out, but move towards.
Yep.
But we want to have some discussion around, like, how do you do that? How do you do it purposefully? What works? What doesn't? And also just like our own opinions on maybe how we'd go about it. But before we get into that, Tim, listen, you are a digital guy. Like, you are on every platform imaginable. I can't tell you how many notifications I get a day that you've either posted something or I've been tagged in something, and I love it. And I
Yeah, sorry
love
about
it.
that.
No, it's great. It's
Just kidding.
fantastic, and I absolutely, absolutely love it. But I'm curious, when you hear this term, okay, digital discipleship, does that term go together? Like, can that actually be done? Because, we just did an episode about evangelism
Yeah.
and all the different types of evangelism and how they're, one-on-one and group settings. And we talked about getting out and having conversations digitally. Like, what does that sound like? What does that mean to you? Digital discipleship.
Yeah. Well, if you're watching the video version, we're both on our Apple Vision Pros. So we
Hey,
just, hey, no, we have pastor money. We don't have that kind of money. But
that's
have you
crazy,
seen those
dude.
things? Those things are
That's
crazy. That's like
amazing.
I was thinking like, man, how much is that going to be like you're in a small group now and you don't have to be with the person, but you can literally have on
No,
your Apple Vision Pro and you look at the person on the couch and they're actually on your couch, but digitally there. Like it's just
right.
augmented reality is kind of we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I think
It's
yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah.
I think to answer your question, you could put digital in front of anything now. I mean,
Yep.
any evangelism, teaching, preaching, prophesying. I mean, you could put digital in front of anything now. So with that, it's kind of like the Jurassic Park question. Just because you could, does that mean you should? You really have to be intentional with the discipleship part. The other stuff comes naturally, the digital marketing, the digital announcements, the digital teaching is a little easier than I think the discipleship's kind of like, do we? Like it,
Mm.
like, are we actually discipling online or are we just spewing information about our upcoming event, and a
Yep.
lot of churches use their Facebook pages or stuff just for, hey, look what we're doing, come to it.
Yes.
And so I think when we talk about discipleship, it's like, are you giving spiritual nourishment to your current church or to Christians in general, So that
Yeah.
spiritual nourishment comes in various forms, and neither one of us are doing this perfectly or even know where the next 5 years are going to go. And so
Certainly
we're
not.
just talking a little bit today about kind of either what we've seen or what we've done. I've had a digital ministry since 2018 with Discerning Dad. And so I've done, the gamut of blogs, books, podcasts, live, go on Instagram Live or TikTok Live or run the clips or post scriptures. And I don't even know which ones of those are discipleship necessarily. I know it's a lot of different things,
Sure.
but throughout that whole thing in the ministry, I'll usually get like a comment that's great or a like or a share, but I don't know who I've really discipled like on that deeper level from having
Right.
done this. It's more like a fire hydrant approach sometimes. Like you just drink from a fire hydrant, you just put it all out there. If it lands on somebody, great. And that's, that happens with what we do, and you scatter the seeds and you hope God waters it, right? But the discipleship
Totally.
part really makes me think of like, okay, do I know any of my followers online by name? Do I know their lives? Have they reached out for questions?
Yeah.
And maybe a few, but the discipleship piece for churches, for you listening, even if you're not in leadership at a church, we really want to talk about how can you be discipled, and then
Right.
how can you disciple others online? That's kind of where we want to
Yeah.
take this.
I think a lot of people are adding value. A lot of churches, a lot of Christians are adding value to other people's lives through things like this, through podcasts, through reels, through different YouTube shorts, and really doing what they can to, like you said, sometimes it is drinking from a fire hose, but like, get the gospel message out there. And I think that's important. Certainly, like we talked about, that's more of a digital evangelism approach. I think it's important for us to know what the goal is when we're doing these things digitally. What I'm finding is that a lot of churches are running after this digital approach because they see it growing other churches.
Yeah.
And to me, that's really dangerous because the churches that are growing from it are doing it really well and have the resources to do it really well and believe in it, like believe they've been called to it and like we're some of the first pioneers to do it. And then you've got like small little Baptist church down the street that's like, we got cameras and we go Facebook Live on Sundays. And, you know, during the week, we say, join us on Sundays. And so we're, you know, it's like we're entering the digital field too. And it's like, yeah, but you got to have a goal. Like, you got to know why you're doing it. I was telling you before we started this, I've had multiple conversations with church leaders over the last several months that are moving to a digital platform, and they're really excited about it. And they've got all these plans. And then I go, that's great. You guys are awesome. Why?
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing it? And it's not like we believe God's called us there. It's not like, hey, through a lot of prayer and discernment, we believe this is the next step in our church. It's not like, hey, we want to reach this community outside of the people who normally attend on Sunday, and we want to draw them into the love that Jesus has for them. Like, I was hoping for answers like that, but honestly, it was more like we just want people who don't know our church is here to know our church is here. And I'm like, that's marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just marketing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Do your marketing, but you got to know why you're doing it. And so we're getting cameras and we're going digital and we're doing all these things. Why are we doing it? To marketing. We just want more people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, all right, I mean, you might want to get to a ministry layer of why you're doing what you're doing. So for me, like, I know at our church, one of the things that we try to focus on is ultimately, how do we feel we can disciple people best? Well, we feel we can disciple people best in person. That's what we believe. So because of that, everything we do is kind of this funnel coming down to in person. But we also understand that just like when you come in on a Sunday morning for church, everybody's coming in with different backgrounds, different life experiences. They're coming in different places. So we want to have some surface level stuff. Like, we want to have some like just Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, things like that. But we want that stuff to point you to the next layer, which are things like this: podcast, going live on Facebook, engagement that way. But we want that to point you to the next layer, which is like Zoom life groups. And then we want that to point you to the next layer, which is meeting in person, which is why we're doing all of this in the first place. So you need to understand, like, why are you doing what you're doing? Because if you know why you're doing what you're doing, then every post, every episode, everything that you do is going to point people towards being in person, because that's where we believe discipleship happens best. If not, you're just going to go, oh, that's a cool idea, we should do that. Or, oh, let's get all the stuff that Life Church puts out for free and let's share that. And, oh, it's the verse of the day, let's share that. And you're just all over the place and you have no culture and you have no real, that's when you don't even know why you're successful if you are successful, or why you're not successful if you're not. Because you're just kind of no rules apply and you can do everything. So I think it's needed. I think you got to know why. You got to know why you're doing it. How do you see, from a structure standpoint, like, how do you see churches using digital discipleship? What are some things you've seen that like are good that are being done? Maybe what are some things that, you know, you're cringy, you know?
A wide net versus a deep net. I'm reading a book from John Mark Comer right now called Practicing the Way. It's just, everything he writes is amazing. And he talks really about what did it actually mean to be a disciple. And he talks about a first century Jewish blessing that says, may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. And his doesn't sound like a blessing, but it's like, may you be covered in the dust of your teacher, that you're so intimately close to them that their dust falls on you. And then when you go and wash and clean, you're clean until the next time you go out with them. And then now you're dirty again. And it's like, I wonder how many Christians are disciples of Jesus to that level that Jesus rubs off on you and you look like him. And then you need to when you take a break and you come back to it, you're going to keep coming back to your master that you look like, because you are his disciple, because you do what Jesus did, which is what Christian means. You're a follower of Christ, not just someone who gives God lip service once a month when you come to church. And so it's a problem that churches have with who's a Christian, who's a congregant, who's just a seat filler, who's a casual this, lukewarm this, and who's an actual disciple, meaning that you're doing what Jesus did. You're evangelizing, you're giving of your time, you're giving of your money, you're faithful to where God's planted you. And that shows up in your life, it shows up in your work, it shows up in your family, all that. And then how do you do that
Mm-hmm.
digitally? It's tough. It's tough because,
It's
like you
really
said,
tough.
in person is where it's at. And
Mm-hmm.
so most of what I see online is teachings, or most of what I see is like wisdom, but there's no back and forth. And
None.
so I think probably the closest thing to that would be like a forum, or what are those called when you have like just 10 people and you pay money, and I can't even think of the name right now, but
Oh, OnlyFans? Let's start an OnlyFans account for the church. Let's do it.
pastorsonly.com. You can follow your favorite pastor. They can read the Bible in front of a fireplace, and then you give them
I
money.
love it.
Okay. Drew and I are starting
Brilliant.
that when we're so
It's brilliant.
no, but
I don't see any issues.
no issues at all. No. Anyway, so
Couldn't help myself.
no,
It was
that's
too
fine.
easy. And no, but you're right. There is, I can't think of what you're talking about either with like a forum, but you're exactly right. Like any kind of inclusive group that's just
Mhm.
like, it's like a subscription of some kind
Yeah.
to your content. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think those do really well because you're in this like 6-8 week thing with these other similar minded people, and you get to know each other very well. You're learning stuff, but you're also giving back of not only your time, but also, whatever the focus is, you're learning and growing. And so I think that's what I see done really well. I like it when, like, I don't necessarily like the personality just like of a mega pastor or whatever, but I like it when
Right.
the senior pastor is engaged either on like a platform like X, or they're doing like small snippets, small videos for their congregation during the week. So it's not just I'll see you next Sunday, but I'll see you tomorrow on the next live I'm on. I like
Right.
that. And that's just me being more of a digital minded person on social media. But I like the fact that when you're on social media, your pastor, your leader is going to be in your face of just encouragement, or just, hey, God
Yeah.
showed me this today. I think the more that the pastor has access to like social media like that without, doing this big fancy production all the time of like,
Right.
it takes 2 weeks to produce this one video, whatever. I think more just like the raw in your face lives, or just something that you can schedule. So if you want to get live with Drew Thursdays at 11, like your congregation can say, okay, now's the time. I may not have had a chance to talk to him on Sunday, but I can actually be on the live. There's only
Yep.
maybe 5-10 people on there, but I can actually ask questions and hear
Yep.
from his heart a little more.
That's one of the things that I really thought was exciting about the whole Apple, what is it? Glasses,
Vision
goggles,
Pro.
Vision
Yeah.
Pro. Golly, dude. One of the things I thought was really neat is you have that avatar of yourself.
Right.
And for me personally, like sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to go live, or oh, I want to record a video, but like I may be just coming out of the gym, or I may like be in the car, or I just got done working in the yard or something like that. And I do wonder, like, I didn't shave today. I want to make sure that I want to present myself a certain way. I want to make sure that I not just get on live at random moments. I want to make sure I got a
Yeah.
shirt on and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I like is that you have an avatar that you could just use and put in Zoom meetings and put on live and put on all these things. And I'm like, dang, I could like essentially Monday through Saturday just let my avatar run all that and still speak, but just, be in any situation, recreate the environment that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And I can make it look super professional, and I can make it look super clean. And yeah, it's a digital version of me, but it's still me that you're interacting with. And I was like, I don't know, like maybe it piqued my interest. And I know if it piqued my interest, there's people that are way smarter and way more creative than I am. And I'm sure it piqued theirs.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if that's maybe like where we're walking towards. Cause look, a lot of pastors, the reason you engage with them on social media during the week is because they have videographers following them around, camera guys following them around. And, you get that great shot of the pastor with his hand raised on Sunday and then a great scripture to go along with it. Or you get a video of the pastor having a conversation with somebody else because they were being followed around. Well, that's great for larger churches, but smaller churches don't have stuff like that. So what's the answer at a small or a middle church? Well, it's all on the pastor to set up his own video, to do his own live. And no offense, but like, we're not good at everything.
What?
Like who would have thought, right? So I may know how to like set up an environment and I may know how to communicate, but like I don't know how to do the lighting right. And I don't know how to always edit post production. And I don't know how to do all of those things. And I
Yeah.
don't always have somebody who does. And so the one thing I thought was pretty neat about the whole vision, Apple Vision thing is like it kind of does some of that for you and takes some
Hmm.
of that burden off of you. So I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. I'm with you. I want to engage with my congregation. I want to see other pastors engaging with their congregation. But it is challenging with your schedule. It is challenging to get in a repetition of it when, for a guy like me, man, like talking to a screen takes energy kind of out of me. And, digital is not something that I'm used to, but I want to get better and get into it and get, because I know that's where a lot of people are. I know it's where a lot of influence is gained.
Right. It was a mastermind that I was thinking of earlier. If you were like yelling at the audio, if you were
Mastermind.
yelling at us
That's it.
because I couldn't think of it, it's a mastermind. And so when you sign
I
up for
thought
like a
it,
mastermind and then you go through this intense like program. So that's a way to
yeah,
disciple. But yeah, there's no, I don't want to say there's right or wrong ways, but there are wrong ways to disciple people. There's no one, approach for everybody, I'll say, because
there you go. Yeah.
yeah, we're also in a growing, like we just talked about, augmented reality. There's virtual reality that's already out there. It's not as widestream as I think Facebook thought it would be when they paid billions of
Hmm.
dollars for virtual reality, but it will come probably in 5, 10 years where it'll be more user friendly and more widely accepted. And so then people will be in VR church, people will be in augmented reality life groups. But again,
Yep.
that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be deep. That doesn't necessarily mean it's discipling. It just means you have another way to reach people, which is good
Right.
if you don't think that all technology is demonic. But also, I think it just comes with the church needs to pivot. It needs to think like, what can we add? But also, like, if you're that small time pastor, like you said, like, you can't do everything. You have to really
Right.
just focus on what either you're good at or that you have time for, what actually your congregation wants. Because if
Right.
you're constantly putting out, resources and information and then nobody's watching it or nobody's getting anything out of it, then you probably should stop because you're wasting your time and you're wasting, just not, there's no value added benefit to it. But I
Yeah.
think there is something to be said for, my pastor just did this recently, is that we were in a deep series of Jesus in the Old Testament stories that were typography and looking at them as how they point to Jesus and the types and shadows back then. And so he did this long, like 30-minute video and then actual resource, like a 6-page resource. And so we put that on
Yeah.
our email, we put that on our YouTube, where people throughout the week can say, okay, we want you to come in Sunday so that you're ready to go with the message, so that you already know these terms. So do your research ahead of time so you can get more out of the message. And I think that's what a disciple does. A disciple reads the word, understands, learns, prepares. And this is a whole nother thing, preparing your heart for Sunday, right? Do you waltz in after you fight with the kids? You're 10 minutes late. Your hands are down in worship. By the time worship's over, you've not entered in, and now you're hearing a message and can't wait for lunch. I mean, that's not
Totally.
what a disciple does. That a disciple prepares your heart in advance. You're praying in advance, hopefully. You're worshiping ahead of time. You come early, and then you enter in right away for worship so that your heart's ready to hear the word, because the word's going to permeate your heart more when you've already given of yourself and worshiped your creator. Now you can hear the word permeates you, and now you respond in prayer. Like all these things are interjected together in such a wonderful way on Sunday that so many people don't take advantage of, because either they leave early or they show up late. And so
Yep.
that's not what disciples do. Disciples really come with, okay, so that's something that all churches offer: worship, sermon, a chance for prayer, and people
Right.
don't take advantage of it. So it's
Right.
really not always about what does a church offer, because all churches have life groups, all churches have ways to get involved. It's really about you stepping up into that. You stepping into that and taking advantage of what a church offers, because now we're telling a church, okay, add digital onto everything you're doing, and now people are going to have a heart for God and be on fire. No, like it's a heart issue. People will not be a disciple just because you have 5,000 things for them to do. You might actually need to cut your menu down so that people can be interactive in just certain things are going to be beneficial to them, but having more is not the
Yep.
answer.
That's 100%. And that's why it's so important to know who you're built for and who you are as a church. Like you mentioned last episode that your church just built a 24-hour prayer room. It's incredible. I'd love to do something like that here. We don't, bro. We ain't there yet.
Right.
We're just not. We're just not. We did a prayer wall. We did a prayer wall. Okay. So that's what we felt called to. You've got a 24-hour prayer room. That's amazing. It's incredible. So does that mean that we should have a 24-hour prayer room? Does that mean that you should have a prayer wall? No, it doesn't. It means that we've both decided that we value prayer. And now we've both said, well, this is what that looks like for our church. Now, here's what kills me. Here's what kills me. When it comes to digital discipleship, I think that if you asked every church, is it important? I would like to think 95% would say, oh, yeah, it's important. Even if they're not doing it, I think they'd say it's important.
Yeah.
But then we get these, like, I don't want to say it's not dumb, but like we get these videos that are put out by churches sometimes. And I'm like, what was the goal here? What was the goal? And it's likes, it's comments, it's engagement.
Yeah.
It's to blow up. It's marketing. And so that means that people start doing trends. Like I saw a pastor the other day and he was like, I'm a pastor, so I get here before everybody else. I'm a pastor, so the whole TikTok trend. It's like, shut up, man. Like, stop. Like, just stop being that guy, or my favorite is, hey, pastor, quick, do a message on 1 Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 5. And he's like,
it's like
1
they interrupt
Corinthians,
you. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, hey. Oh, I wasn't expecting you to video me. 1 Corinthians 5. Oh, I know I'm wearing this little mic on my collar, but I didn't even know you were going to be here. Oh, 1 Corinthians 5. Oh, that's a great passage because I have my Bible memorized, and here's what my message would be. It's like, dude, so what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to come to your church because you wowed us with a scripture. We're supposed to think you're so smart now? Like, I don't know. Listen, if I'm being ridiculous, just tell me I'm being ridiculous. But it's such a dangerous place to go. It's such a dangerous place to go because on the other end of that are pastors like really leaning into culture. And we're trying to then on Sundays pull people out of culture. How does that make sense? How on Monday through Saturday can you do videos that are the top trends, not to mention using top trending music that isn't Christian music?
Oh, geez.
But I can't stand that. Here's the latest Drake song under my Christian Bible verse. Yeah, good one, right? And then on Sunday, you got the audacity to get up in front of your congregation and talk about how ridiculous culture is. You've been living it the whole week. What are we doing? You played Drake and you did the latest TikTok trend, and now you want me to come out of that? Yeah. You're a liar. Like, you're just a liar. So it's really challenging because you've got to, I can't say it enough, like, what you put on social media, you can't go away from. Go look at your Facebook memories. They're there. And you think you can delete them, but they're there. And so you got to just be really careful and really intentional about what you're doing. And you got to know why, and you got to know the direction. Just like anything, like, you just got to be purposeful. Yeah. And you got to ask, like, why am I doing this? Yeah. Like, why am I making this Facebook post? Why am I making this TikTok video? So for me, I think digital discipleship, I think it can be done, but here's the kicker. It's really hard. It's really hard. Yeah. And it's got to go past join us for church on Sunday and then seeing you on Sunday. So we have pastors that are like, well, I have this podcast, or I have this video, or I have this platform, or I have this social media account. And it's got to get past, look at me. Right. It's got to get past, look at how I know Jesus. Because discipleship is not, look at how I know Jesus. It's teaching you what I know, showing you what I know, leading you in what I know, guiding you in what I know. So it's got to go past, like, this is how smart I am, or this is what I can do, or you should come to church. But there's got to be the engagement aspect. I think Zoom groups, I think anytime you can do small groups on a digital platform, things like that, like, I think that is certainly the way to go. But that also means you have to get people really bought into that. That means you got to look at a screen. Yeah. And that's hard. Takes a lot of time, takes a lot of energy, but you got to do it.
Yeah. and how many people have gotten in trouble from tweets they did 5, 7 years ago that then they get canceled. And so that stuff is out there forever. And so if you do a trend
Mhm.
that's no longer a trend in 2 years and someone looks back, like, what was that person thinking? Like, it's not relevant anymore. And so
I
once
know.
it's out there, it's out there. Also, don't create another avatar so that you can tell people things in the Facebook comments. If you're a pastor, people have gotten in trouble for that before. But
I think I heard of that once.
yeah. But you have to be careful because I'm a little more lenient on those types of things like trends and stuff, being that I'm the social media guy. And I
Right.
understand the point, but also don't say that you're discipling people online if that's all you do. Like, just be real with it. Like, our method, why we have an Instagram or a TikTok for me or my church is to just reach people, just to throw it out there and then hopefully people see it. Like, you know, I could go on for that, but I would just say, like, you have to, like you said, know what you're doing, why you're doing it, what's the purpose and vision behind it, and then stick to it. So if that's your vision, then
Right.
stick to it. Don't just do a one-off here and there, because then people will be like, wait, this isn't the normal channel stuff. Like, it
Right.
confuses people. And then you have a, upcoming potluck on Instagram, and then you have a bunch of different content on Instagram, for example, and it's just like you never know what you're going to get when it pops up at the church.
Right.
And so that's why, like, if you have a Facebook, make that specifically for one thing, or an Instagram for one thing. I like that approach because there are different demographics on different social medias. And so knowing that, and so maybe on TikTok, you do those funny videos, but don't put it on your Facebook reels. Don't put it
Yeah.
on your
Don't do that.
Instagram reels. Keep it on TikTok where it's relevant,
Right.
where it's actually a trend, and where you have that even relevant music that's hopefully still Christian. I got in
Some
trouble for that once. I put a trending song on my thing. This was years ago. And didn't know until someone in the comments said about it being unclean, and I removed the video. But
Yep.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not fun.
No, it's not. And it's this pressing want to have something go viral.
Yeah.
And we all want that. There's that pride in us and there's that want in us. I know that deep down everybody listening is like, no, I just want Jesus to be made known. And I don't think about that at all. But you do. And we all do. And it would be great if you woke up tomorrow and all of a sudden had 1 million followers. It would change things.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, we got to know why we're doing it. I like your approach of saying that, like, different social medias for different things. I'm curious. Let's say that there's a ministry listening to this podcast and you were to tell them that they can only get on one social media platform between Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok. Like, there's only one
Mm.
social media platform that they can be on. Where do you think churches would be most effective?
Wow, that's tough.
Yeah.
Does
I
Facebook
know what my
and
answer would be, but I want to know what yours would be.
can I say get on Meta? Because that covers Facebook and Instagram. No, okay.
Nope.
Darn
Nope.
it. I'd say, as much as I don't know, I'm the older school guy too. I'd say Facebook still. If you want to have a page, if you want to have groups, if you want to have messaging, if you want to have all that stuff, then Facebook's probably the best spot for that. I'd say you could probably just do Instagram at this point because it is kind of trending to that, especially for the younger demographic, and you can do a lot of
Yeah.
those things on there too. That's kind of what I would say if you had to pick.
Okay. Yeah, I was leaning towards Instagram because I see the same things. Like, you're starting to be able to segment people into like chats and things like that. And yeah, that's really
So I
cool.
want to share a story with ChatGPT. We talked about this before too, but I had a call with a company that's helping churches use ChatGPT, and I told these guys I just wanted to be on the call because it's my wheelhouse, and I told these guys, like, you're like pioneers on this. Like 5, 10 years down the road, it's going to be saturated, but you guys are like so good on them. Like, maybe that's what I would do if I had their shoes at this point, just to kind of get ahead of it. But it was interesting. What they offer for churches is 3 things. The first one is a chat GPT software that learns your sermons, so the last 2 to 5 years of your sermons, and then creates your church name chat GPT. And so what that does is you can put it on your website and people can go to it and ask questions about anything. What does this church believe about fill in the blank? What has this pastor said about the gifts of the Spirit? What has this church preached about the book of James? And then it comes from your whole history of sermons, which I thought was awesome. The only downside to that was the fact that you have to actually log into ChatGPT Plus, which most people don't have because it's the paid version. So,
And, there's just that one time that at, 1 a.m. in the morning when you're asleep and somebody logs in and asks a question and ChatGPT answers it the wrong way and they screenshot it and they throw it out on social media and you're unaware It's
Yeah.
that one time.
I thought
It's
about
that
that too. Like,
one
what
time.
if some of your sermons have kind of, maybe you changed a little bit over the years or they don't quite match up? Like, what if there's some conflict even among your sermons? Because
Yeah.
so the other thing now, there's two more things. One is blog posts. So if you just preached on Sunday, you can have a blog post on Monday. And the blog post, they actually took one of my previous sermons for the demo, and it was very well done. It did not look like just a transcript. It looked like with headers and bullets and
Oh,
just the
wow.
key things. It was a very well done blog post. The problem with that is that blogs are dying. They probably peaked 10 years ago. And for the most part, people don't read blogs anymore. Then the third thing, which was cool, is they take 6 to 8 of your sermons and they'll write you a book, like a legit book. And so if you
Wow.
had a sermon series on one theme that would turn into a good book, you can actually, it's basically ghostwriting, which has been around forever, but it's basically ghostwriting through ChatGPT. And then I was like, how do you take out like the personalization of the sermons and like the local context and like talking about the weather and all that stuff, and they had all this complicated algorithm that I don't even understand on how to do that. But it seemed pretty legit.
Wow.
Like they wrote one chapter for me based on a sermon I preached. And that's
Wow.
what,
And that's
honestly,
through ChatGPT
yeah.
Plus?
Yeah. And so anyway, they do all that for you and with a small cost associated with it. The book's, a couple $1,000. But anyway, that's honestly what some of the big preachers do now. They either get it ghostwrited or they take like the sermon series that they just preached and they just
Yep.
make it into a book and do very little work from there. But anyway, that's kind of where some of this stuff is going, is more automation and additional resources. But just to close this conversation, I'd say, we talked a lot about what not to do if you're a digital creator and for churches. But if you are a Christian listening and you don't necessarily have a digital platform, but you're like, hey, I need more discipleship in my life. How can I get discipled? What are some good things we can tell people as we close?
Yeah, if you're looking to get discipled, I mean, this is an awesome start, like finding a podcast that you connect with that is going to put out consistent content week over week. For me in my life, I have several podcasts that I connect with that help grow me in different areas. Some of them are
Yeah.
based solely around biblical knowledge. Others are based around leadership. Others are based around specifically ministry leadership. And then others are based around like how to build community. And it's not even really like focused biblically. It's just like, hey, how can you rally people around what you're doing? So I think podcast is a great thing. I still think that's as saturated as the market is, because now, let's be honest, I mean, everybody has a podcast. So as saturated as the market is, it's still like the bread and butter of, I believe, how you're going to get discipled digitally. The other thing is, like, I would ask someone and try to engage with them. There's a couple pastors in my life that don't live anywhere near me. And I just send them like Zoom links and I'm like, can you do this?
Yeah.
Can I get 30 minutes with you? Can I get an hour with you? Can I FaceTime you? I will work around your schedule, but like ask for it. I know if somebody reached out to me and was like, hey, I just would like an hour of your time, this date. And if you have anything open that day, like let me know. I'd really work hard to try and make that happen.
Yeah.
And so I think to me, podcasts, find those, several of them. And then I would look at somebody's life that you want to be like go, hey, that person is doing it the right way, and just reach out to them. I think if you
Yep.
do that enough, that's going to work.
Yeah, that's great. Like asking someone in a church to mentor them, to be mentored, and you can do that digitally now too. And you have a wide range of people that may not live right next to you that can do that. So that's one of the benefits. The only thing I'd add, I think, in addition to all that, is to say that, if you are going to make a distinction between information and discipleship, because there's no
Mhm.
shortage of information, and you might have 20 pastors you listen to, and then what happens is when the pastor you actually go to on Sunday says something you don't like, you're like, well, this other person I listened to says it differently, right? And you start to have this wide range of just anybody can tell you what you want. And to actually sit under the pastor you're in the congregation for and to learn from them. And granted, their time's limited and they can't necessarily mentor you one-on-one, but if you are going to go for information, make sure that it's very specific, intentional, and
Mhm.
doesn't just cover so many bases that you just information overload, you don't do anything with it. Information should affect us in a way that causes us to reflect and causes us to
Mhm.
take action to change something. Just like when you hear a sermon, it's not just for information, it's actually for change, it's for response, it's for
Right.
Holy Spirit conviction. And then now I need to do something different because I now have new
Yeah.
information. So no matter where you get your information, there always should be a level of, okay, I need to do something with it. And that's where
Totally.
disciples hear the information and then do something with it. So that's more of a caution than anything on how to be discipled. I think a lot of the good discipleship online will cost you money, whether it's a mastermind or whether it's a Patreon offering where someone opens up their time. And the thing is, I can't stand the comments are like, you're in ministry, you shouldn't get paid for it. Like, someone's giving you their time when they could go in a corporate job and get $100 an hour, like, and they're charging you $20 an hour to be a part of their program. If that's
Yeah.
valuable to you, then either pay it or don't pay it, but don't
Yeah. But
tear
don't,
people down
yeah.
because they're charging for stuff.
Right.
Anyway, that's a separate topic, but that's how I would say just discipleship, be intentional, realize that you need to be discipled one way or another, whether in person or digitally. And then, like I said before, we're all called to follow our master, to follow Jesus's footsteps, to be like him, to look like him, to have everything that he stood for, and to rub off on us in the fact that people are like, wow, your face is shining. You've been with Jesus, kind of like Moses. When we are
Yep.
in our quiet space, when we're online and being discipled in ways where we're looking like Jesus, that will come out where we have the peace of God, we have the fruit of the Spirit, and then real life change will happen and evangelism will happen too. So
It's great.
awesome. Well, thanks for being with us. Let us know your thoughts on digital discipleship. You can email eyesonjesuspodcast@outlook.com. Please like and share this podcast. We're reliant upon you for our marketing efforts. And reach out to us, reach us in the comments. There's also a Facebook community group as well. We post stuff in there exclusive to that group. So until next time, go with God, grow in discernment, and keep your eyes on Jesus.